Hello, Wesley. I'm just going to rabbit on just for a little while before we get down to the nitty-gritty. I'm a Urali Iman from the northwest of the state, up around Walgett Way, Lightning Ridge. I'm a retired school teacher. I retired from teaching 23 years ago after 39 years in the New South Wales teaching service. And during that time, I saw many and important changes in the thought climate. And as you know, the schools mirror that thought climate. So I was very interested in the changes made to, as far as Indigenous people and Indigenous education was concerned. For me, it was a most exciting journey. And so in the next half hour, I'll be talking to you about your educational journey. And thank you for your involvement and your contribution to this new learning and teaching film, Indigenous Learning Ecologies, which will be used to highlight the role of Indigenous educators and to inform those involved with teacher preparation about the problems that Indigenous educators have and the concerns and the problems and the difficulties that are experienced by Indigenous educators and Indigenous kids. So, let's get down to tin tacks. What moments have been significant to you in your educational journey, and why? For example, in both formal and informal contexts such as primary school, secondary school, at university, and learning in the community. What significant moments?
I was trying to think about it, and there's been so many positive moments over the past 4 years, but there was one negative moment or experience in high school I'll never forget. And I was sat at home one night and my parents had been to the parent-teacher interviews in, I think it was year 9 or 10. And they'd come home after speaking to my visual arts teacher and they were told that I didn't have an artistic bone in my body. And I sat there and thought, I'd already chosen it for electives for year 11 and 12 and I thought, oh, I'm going to have to drop it straight away. But I had a new teacher in year 11 and 12 and I ended up getting, I think, in the high 90s for my HSC. Right. And I just thought, stick it to that year 10 teacher that told me I couldn't do it. And I don't know where I am now. I just think, how could he have said such a thing to my parents? And it's such a shame that I had him for those 2 years. I wish I would have had the other teacher. And I would have thought how much more I could have achieved in those 2 years.
I think it's been the experience of us as a people that it's wise to develop selective hearing. You hear what you want, what you would like to hear. For instance, I had a similar experience to yours. When it was known that I was going to go be a teacher, one of the ladies of the squattocracy was heard to say, of course he won't teach white kids, he'll only teach black kids. So I think sometimes statements like that make us all the more determined to achieve that goal that we're chasing. Who or what has been the most influential personal experience along the way, and why? And in what ways has this influenced where you are now?
Okay, there are two I thought of. One at the beginning, my year 11 and 12 visual arts teacher, Sharon Hardy. She was also the school's Indigenous coordinator. Throughout year 11 and 12, she was really there to support me. Throughout year 11, she got the process of the DEC Teacher Education Scholarship going, helped me fill it out, apply, get all the right references, helped me with the interview process, and that's been a major influence in where I am today. A few months out from going down and teaching at Warrabong High School full time as a part of the scholarship, so I wouldn't be here today where I am without what she'd done for me. And there wasn't a lot of opportunities presented to us at my high school. She really went out of her way to find the right one for me. And the second is Frank Maltese, my cooperating teacher for my professional internship. He was an ex-COFA graduate, head teacher at Willoughby Girls High School, and his support over the last 15 weeks has been so immense, and the experience I've had there is so enriching, and it is going to be a lot different to Warrawong, but the experiences I had there are going to last a lifetime, I think.
It's so important, isn't it, to have that guidance at the right time. But it happened to me. A teacher called McKinnon made it possible for me to navigate the system, because my mum and dad couldn't read or write, and when it was McKinnon who was instrumental in me becoming a state bursar, which enabled me to go to high school. And we thought the education system stopped at the village school, and when a high school was mentioned, we thought that it was surely must be a school up in stilts. We didn't know. But with the help of the teacher and people who knew more than we did in the community, was able to make the journey to the high school, and that's where it all started. Yes. How important is being connected to people and community? And what people and community and networks have been significant to you in your educational journey?
Okay. Like I mentioned before the interview, I'm from the South Coast, Jervis Bay, New South Wales. So a lot of my family is down that way. I don't have much family up here, so that sense of community came more from the university and the School of Art Education, and particularly Kim and Robin, the two prac coordinators for my professional internship. They were always there. Robin was there to support me throughout that 14 weeks as well. Not that I needed that much guidance with Frank, but they do an immense amount of work to network and find these schools for us, and they go above and beyond to create these relationships. And especially with Willoughby Girls High School, I was the first COFA student in I think 20 years to complete their professional experience there, and just because of the last principal's attitude towards the university, it didn't stop them. They kept persisting, and they finally got one in there, and I hope I did them proud over that 14-week stint. So if I didn't have that support, or if the whole cohort didn't have that support, I think it would be a much more difficult job.
So it's very important to have that catalyst, and that's something that you will remember when you become a teacher, that you can make a difference. And when I got to a position where of some authority in schools, I always reminded teachers of what a great opportunity they had, what a great responsibility they had and they could bend the twig, just like my teacher McKinnon had done for me. So it's a very important profession that you're going into, and I think from what you're saying, you realise that is so. Why did you choose to study art education? And Well, let's extend that a little bit more. Why did you choose to study art education, and in what ways is education important to you and others? And can you give examples of that?
It started in years 11 and 12. I was okay at other things, but didn't really have my grounding. I wasn't sure what direction I was going in. And then I had the support of Sharon Hardy, and she provided a significant role model for me. She was kind of the person I aspired to be, and as I started getting better and better at visual art, I thought I could one day hopefully be a good role model as she was for me. And coming in through COFA, doing the 4 years and reaching the end, having the support of an ex-COFA graduate as my mentor, it all clicked. It's just one big cycle. And I know it's already been mentioned to me a few times that in a few years I'll have my prac students coming to me, and I hope that I can continue that cycle. I mean, I know I'm only a young teacher, but yeah, I can't wait.
I'd ask the question, what way is education important to you? I think, when we look at now our people in outback places, like the place that I come from, a place called Gadooga, or places that are familiar to me like Walgett and Lowanna, we see a lot of people who I think are conditioned to believe, and perhaps it's easy to believe, that we should remain at the bottom rung on the bottom rung of the ladder, and they don't see education as important. What do you say to that?
I think that is an issue, and a lot of schools are attempting to address it. I mean, when I was down the south coast just recently, I was speaking to some relatives, and Vincentia High School, they have a large Indigenous population, and they struggle to maintain student numbers, and a lot of the students don't have a positive attitude towards learning, and they've received funding to develop a new Indigenous Learning Centre where students can come if they're feeling pressured or if they're feeling anxious about anything. They can come speak to members from the community and just really try and get their head grounded, and I think the community works with them quite well to try and develop that positive attitude towards learning that might not necessarily have been there otherwise without.
I just wonder why our people can't see those opportunities as they're in abundance. The opportunities are available. You're sticking out like a dog's tail. And I was looking at the Australian story the other night of a Sudanese young fellow who came out here when he was 15, escaping the ravages of Sudan and the wars there, landed here with his mum and siblings with no English. At 27 he had a double degree. He was embarking on an MBA and looking at medicine down the line. Now, why can't our fellows see those opportunities?
I don't know, I think there's a kind of stigma.
It's an unfair question to ask you, but I'd be interested to hear what you say about that.
I think there's a stigma attached to these kind of opportunities where if our young community members do apply for them and further themselves both vocationally and educationally, that the wider community just thinks they've been given these opportunities because they're Indigenous and they haven't earned them or haven't put the work in to deserve them. And it's a real shame. I mean, I've faced that, I'll admit that, with my scholarship. No. There were assumptions that I just got into the course and received the scholarship because I was Indigenous. People didn't take into account the work I'd done.
I think that's also a problem within our Indigenous communities as well. People who want to advance, better themselves, are inclined to be cut off at the knees by their own people. And we have a word in Euralia, dira. Who do you think you are? So if you're progressing, if you're soaking up education, we have people using this word dira. Who do you think you are? Now, you're bettering yourself. And they cut you off at the knees. That is something that we have to overcome, I think. I'll just read you something that it's related to that, and it's said by another black person, Oprah Winfrey, and she said, "I don't think of myself as a poor little ghetto girl who made good. I think of myself as someone who from an early age knew that I was responsible for myself and I had to make good."
I think that's just the attitude ingrained into our communities, though, and it.
And how did we get that? You know, I'm thinking about when the mandatory policy, Aboriginal education, Aboriginal studies came to schools. Now, I was quite excited about that, naturally. And I think it was sort of contagious, and the teachers in my school were anxious to be part of that, but they didn't know how to proceed. And we tried to enlist the involved Indigenous community, but they weren't interested. And I think it's because of the negative experiences that they had when they were as students. So I think with what do you think about more involvement of Indigenous communities in schools, schools reaching out to Indigenous communities being involved in schools? Is that the solution to changing to attitudinal change?
That's a tough one then, because if you do bring in members of the community, it's hard to differentiate between that role as the community member and the professional coming in to help our students, and they can easily become tied in situations that go beyond the school, and it might also hinder the process as well.
Yes, it's possibly so, but I envisage the sharing of knowledge, Indigenous knowledge, would be so beneficial because most people who work in schools have no inkling of how Indigenous communities operate. So I think I'd be encouraging that strong liaison between Aboriginal communities and school, and I think it's happening. Now in programs that we have running down the south coast, closing the gap, I think that sort of thing is happening, and I'm hoping that it will lead to greater participation in everyday affairs of this country. You know, our people will become more educated and more able to participate in the everyday affairs of this country, rather than elect to dwell on past injustices and do nothing. Yeah. Perhaps I'm just deviating from the questions here, and I shouldn't do that. That's rather unkind of me. What is important about the visual arts in your learning and the learning of others? And would you give an example of how visual arts has enriched your journey and how it might enrich the journey of others?
Okay. Like I said before, I was around about average in my other subjects, but visual arts really allowed me to kind of relate my personal experiences to learning, and I found that a much more successful approach than some of the other kind of authoritative and top-down subjects like maths and science. And I think especially in Indigenous communities where this notion of the narrative and community are such influential factors, the visual arts really provide a solid foundation for students to grasp on to learning and provide opportunities for them to feel comfortable and like they're achieving something in the classroom where other subjects might not. And as for the visual arts, enriching my journey, I think it's become more than that now, where my journey is more about enriching the lives of others, and hopefully over the next 3 years I can really develop my practice and try and encourage, because there is a large Indigenous community at Warrawong High School, and try and first of all develop my practice so I become a good teacher, and then work on developing opportunities for the young Indigenous community down there.
And it's good that you are going to Warrawong High, or any place where there's a high or a fairly significant Indigenous enrolment, because I firmly believe that an Indigenous presence in a school is a hell of a lot more effective than tomes of paper. They can see that an Indigenous person can do as well or better in any job that's assigned to them. So you're going to be an important part of Warrawong, and I'm sure you'll do it very, very well. Would you give an example of the obstacles you have come up against in your journey, and how you have negotiated to move forward?
Okay, yeah, that touches back on what I mentioned previously, and that was the one defining thing that kind of not hindered my process, but made me question the career path and whether or not I was the right person for the job, and whether or not I deserved to be in the position I was in. And constantly people would question my role at university, whether it was just handed to me or they didn't consider if I deserved it or not. And it's a shame, because it puts off young Indigenous students from applying for these opportunities that are out there. And it's a shame that the wider community can't see that just because those opportunities are there doesn't mean that we don't deserve them.
You have no problems in navigating the system?
No, it's just the system. You work your way around it, you take it with a grain of salt.
I suppose in metropolitan areas we're more fortunate, and people who are out west and out in country areas where the only place of learning is the local school. They don't have high schools or TAFEs or universities, particularly little tin pot places like Gaduga and Hebel, and I think people are more, our parents, the parents these days are better educated and more aware of how the country functions. My mum and dad couldn't read or write. So that was a great impediment. How has your view of who and what is important in becoming a professional person changed over time?
Okay. Again, this links back to how young I am, coming straight out of high school into the art education degree. On my 3 pracs prior to my professional experience, I was told you're going to have to do a lot to differentiate yourself from the students because you are so young. And they placed a large emphasis on that, and it got to the point where I was concentrating on so much on differentiating myself that I kind of lost my ability to interact with the students, and that definitely hindered my teaching in the long run, I think. And coming into a school like Willoughby, no mention of differentiation. I found after 2 or 3 weeks that I was really making an inroads into developing the kind of teacher I want to be in the long run. And Frank Maltese, after a few weeks, he said, "I think you know where you're heading, and you know what you have to do." So it's a good thing to see.
In your journey thus far, have you met any instances of racism?
Imposed upon me,
Pardon?
or within the classroom, do you mean?
Classroom, community, teachers, whatever.
No, not particularly. There was one school that was quite... the enrolments were particular to one ethnic group, and there was subtle instances of racism, but not directed towards me. And I mean, as long as you say straight out to your students, this isn't an acceptable behaviour, you're not going to tolerate it in the classroom, and it reflects poorly upon yourself and those around you. I mean, establishing that from the get-go, I think it's necessary, especially in schools where there's quite a multicultural enrolment.
Yeah. I think racism is always sort of hiding in a school environment. I mentioned a funny instance that when I was at Berkeley, there was about a 30% ethnic enrolment, mostly Yugoslav, and it was towards the end of my term as principal at Berkeley, and they had an influx of Korean people. And I was out on the playground one day, and I heard one of the Yugoslav kids say to a recently arrived Korean kid, "Go home, you wog." So, just an interesting funny little incident about racism. And everybody has it, haven't they? But it's hard to wear. What is the best way to assist Indigenous and non-Indigenous students to achieve what you have done at university?
I try to approach this question more from what I'm expecting down at Warrawong rather than my experience at high school and university. And speaking with the principal down there, it's obvious that a lot of the students there don't have that support or backing from their parents in regards to schooling, and they come to school and they look to you as a role model. So just being there, supporting them, trying to create this positive attitude in the classroom, and especially with the young Indigenous students, letting them know that there are opportunities out there and doing all you can to support them and trying to motivate them to take these opportunities. It's not always easy, but if you can get one student, one or two,
just one
even.
Just one is a great achievement. Yeah.
And hopefully one day they'll be sat where I am.
Yeah. Well, I have no doubt that you're going to bend the twig as McKinnon did for me. Well, I found that as a teacher, you're not only you're judged not only on the ability to deliver subject matter, but your ability to change and influence those with whom you are involved, influence them for the good. And the role of a teacher is so important. And these are my expressions when I delivered an occasional address at University of Wollongong about how important it is to be a teacher. So I said to the graduating students on that particular evening, I congratulate you for what you have accomplished thus far, and I congratulate you too, and wish you well as you go to work with our most precious resource. Your rewards may not come at the end of the day, or week, or month, or even a year, but 20 or more years down the track. Your work will not make you rich in money terms. Your wealth will be measured in turning people's lives around as McKinnon did for me. Teaching is an exciting and important profession, for teaching creates all other professions. Having become a teacher, I can assure you that your days will never be the same, in more ways than one. And I have the support of one who writes, throughout the course of a day, I have been called upon to be an actor, friend, nurse, doctor, coach, finder of lost articles, money lender, taxi driver, psychologist, substitute parents, salesman, politicians, and keeper of the faith. I am a warrior, daily doing battle against peer pressure, negativity, fear, conformity, prejudice, ignorance, and apathy. But I have great allies: intelligence, curiosity, individuality, creativity, faith, love and laughter all rush to my banner with unfailing report. I am a teacher. And I say to you, in my own language, Mayu Yanaya. Travel well. Good luck.